Bem-vindos ao podcast What Drives You. Aqui exploramos histórias, estratégias e ferramentas das pessoas que têm bem claro o que as move. Por isso, se queres ser uma delas, mantém-te por aí, porque a jornada vai começar. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the What Drives You podcast, and today I'm really happy to share with you guys my conversation with Serj Hunt. Serj is an entrepreneur and an amazing human being that has built a lot of different projects and researched a lot of different areas. However, he built Edu Creator operating system, an operating system based on Notion, the note-taking app that allows content creators like we at What Drives You to build more structured and effective content, such as courses, online courses, workshops, and a bunch of different things. Throughout our conversation, we talk about spirituality, about his journey through academia, and of course about Edu Creator and what made him build it. And I really think that you're going to learn a lot with our conversation. I hope you like it. You must follow Serj on social media and on his website. The links are in the description. Please go follow him. And before I share with you our conversation, a word of thank you to our sponsors, Gerações Mais, a Portuguese project that wants to help young people to develop a more healthy lifestyle in order for them to become more healthy and happy adults. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Serj Hunt. Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast episode. And today I have Serj Hunt. Serj, thank you so much for being here. As you know, and this is for Serj and also for everyone who's listening, English is not my main language, but I'm challenging myself to do more episodes in English, and I'm just wanted to put that out here. So my first question to Serj is, and actually it starts with a story, okay? So when I was digging into Edu Creator, which is your product, and we'll talk about it, I went to your website, and there was this one sentence that made me think, I'll enjoy whatever this guy is doing, right? From everything and that was sentence was, and I'm quoting, I'm just a future parent who's passionate about creating tools and environments for my children's flourishing. And that sentence, it made me think, yeah, that's the kind of people I want producing content and things that I'll buy. So I want to start here and ask you, why do you want to be a parent, and what does that mean to you?
Sure, that's such a fun place to start. I'm happy someone noticed this sentence on my website. Yeah, parenting, it's a funny thing. I guess what's really inspiring about parenting is that it's such a transformative experience. I think there's something which happens kind of like a biological switch or something which happens in you when you start to think about what it means to take responsibility for another human's life in this way. I remember when I was maybe 17 or 18, I started having these thoughts, which was like, holy shit, I wouldn't know how to do that. I can't support a family yet. And then I don't think many men, and maybe even women, really grow up until they kind of think about these things and claim that responsibility. So I don't know where that came from exactly. I just kind of arrived to me that I should be thinking about this, and I think it's kind of a part of being human. These questions about parenting and taking responsibility for children.
Yeah, it's actually also, at least to me, a driving force to my own work. I mean, whenever I'm trying to decide what new project I'm going to build, or how am I going to do something, I always think, well, I want to build a better world for not only my children, but as well other children. And at least to me, sometimes when you're tired, or when it gives you this sense of purpose, at least once again to me, at least this sense of purpose and energy. So Serj, there's a lot of things I want to cover, and we'll probably we'll go everywhere, but let me start by asking you something, which is let's talk about your academic journey. All right. One of the things that I usually like to do in the podcast is go from childhood until at least your college experience. So let's start there. And one of the things I actually find out was that you have this set of questions that you like to answer or to ask to other people, and I actually stole two or three of them. But you had one that I really liked, which was, are there any childhood memories or stories that had meaning to what you do today? And I would actually like to start there and asking you, is there any story?
Wow, cool. You've done your research. This is really cool. So I think there's a couple. There's a couple. I think what's most significant is a collection of experiences that I had growing up in a multicultural and multi-faith family. My mother was Muslim, is Muslim, and my dad was growing up in a Christian context, but kind of has more Buddhist thoughts. I have Malaysian and Chinese heritage, as well as Indian heritage and English heritage. So all these different kind of religious and cultural questions being brought to me at a young age, which was kind of a identity dance to do for a long time. And this really kind of invoked these questions of like, what is a human? What are we doing here? Who's right and wrong? Is any one religion better than the other? And so I was kind of forced into asking these questions quite young. Another thing which feels significant is some strange sets of dreams, and also kind of strange, I don't know how to describe these. They feel kind of extrasensory, but I used to wake up feeling very big, like taller than my size, and getting out of bed and feeling super tall,
Yeah.
and then like shrinking to the size of an ant. And I wasn't sure what was going on. So this was like a weird thing. I was like, oh wait, maybe consciousness isn't so stable. It kind of changes. It does different things. And then I used to also fall asleep and feel like I would shrink to the size of an atom, but expand to the size of the wall.
Yeah.
So just some strange experiences like this, and it's just going, well, it kind of got me questioning everything really. So I think these are kind of the significant childhood things, which really drove me to these questions.
Did you deal with that as a child, or it because I'm not sure, and you tell me, but dealing with those kind of experiences as a child, was it a really awakening? Did it bring, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it got me reading a lot of books. I basically ended up just being super hungry for answers.
Yeah.
I didn't have any frame to put this into. Something about the going towards these religious bodies for answers just wasn't satisfying, um, you know. And so it got me really interested in kind of like psychology, the kind of human development movement, spirituality, and just scanning across all of these different bodies for information.
So let me ask you, let's just jump into a certain specific period of time, which is high school. And
Cool.
a lot of people that listen to my podcast and work with my own company are high school students. And one thing that I really like when I have guests like you is actually asking them, how was your high school experience? And did you learn any lesson that you carry until today?
Yeah, high school was fun. It was, I remember feeling extremely forced into sort of different boxes. It felt like my identity was kind of like, you have to be the sporty guy because you're tall. And, but you're not the maths guy. And, but, your English teacher tells you you're bad. So there's this kind of weird sort of sensation of like an identity being pushed in very like opposite directions. And so that was one experience I had. I was also kind of pulled between being very like creative. I was like head of art at my school or something, and also loving like physics and sciences. But there was one thing that really stood out to me during high school, and I think it happened to a lot of other people, was these moments where the kind of flatness or the boringness of moving from class to class was broken up by moments of like deep inspiration from a teacher. And I think this happens across a lot of other people, where they think they're really bad at stuff. You know, they go through the whole of school being like, oh, I'm terrible at these things, I can't get the grades, or, you know, my parents don't think I'm great. And then a teacher will say something to you, or like make a comment on something, and it will just suddenly like click in your head. And I remember this happening with a teacher called Mr. Osborne. He was the like computer technician at my school, and he used to fix the computers, install Windows 2000 or whatever it was back then. And he basically said, hey, like, you're pretty good at this computers thing. Do you want to try and build a PC? And so he let me be in his sort of technician space. You know, you've got like the rubberized mats. And so I spent a bunch of time like pulling apart computers and putting them together. And I was like, oh, this is the first experience I have where like I'm given full agency and control over what I'm doing. No one's like breathing over my shoulder. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And I think this happens in other domains as well. Like someone saying, oh, you're just really great at that. Do you want to try it out? Or making a really nice comment. So yeah, high school was this kind of flat thing until meeting Mr. Osborne, which inspired this whole like drive towards technology and computers and stuff. So yeah.
So how was it easy to choose what were your you were going to do once you finish high school and start college?
Not at all. This is a brilliant thing. There's a kind of forced thing where you should, I think many people believe that you should kind of know what you should do. But I definitely, another thing which stood out to me after high school was like, why do we have these kind of structures around the different domains and topics? They were so deeply related in my mind. Like there was like a historical argument in the sciences, and there was quite an artistic element of computers. And so I could see all these kind of connections. I was like questioning why do the subjects need to exist this way? And so I kind of grew up with this kind of mindset that I would learn almost everything, so long as it kind of was to do with like these questions that I had. Like I didn't really care what domain it was or what you would call it or what class it was, so long as it kind of helped me see patterns. And I think that was the main thing that I picked up after high school. Was I wasn't interested in being the best physicist or whatever. It was just like, do these patterns help me see into things more clearly? Yeah.
Okay. So you actually are you talk a lot about anthropology, and we were actually talking about that before we started the podcast. And I'm actually really curious into how did you got into that space. And actually, for some students who may listen to this and don't know what anthropology is, please give us a 101 and then tell us how did you got into that space.
Sure. Yeah. Anthropology is this kind of very broad field, but it basically has to do with the study of kind of human culture, human behavior in groups, and the kind of things that we produce as a culture, and the patterns. So that's the books and the artifacts that we make, as well as the societies that we create. And so anthropology was this thing which kept cropping up. I didn't really know how to do anthropology, but I was very excited about being a part of other cultures. And I think this is like a standard practice, basically, to immerse yourself in the culture that you're studying in anthropology, so you can kind of firsthand see what is going on and the different kind of social practices, the ways that people interact with each other, and then to write up your conclusions and your observations about these cultures. So this is kind of like the study of anthropology in a very like in a nutshell. Broad way. But the way I was kind of brought to it was that I noticed after speaking to Ruth Crick, who is a leading learning science researcher and dear friend of mine in England, that basically school and education is much more about much more than getting the results and the test scores. And she basically opened my eyes to this broader conception of what learning and education could be about. And I'd only ever experienced it from the kind of English perspective that, you know, you should go to school and get grades and you just keep following this track and you'll be a good human somehow. But there was so much more, and I was so interested in like how some of my like Indian friends or Somali friends or different cultures had been raised. So I wanted to know more about that. And so I ended up, after university, spending a long time sort of being in different kinds of learning contexts, places where people were engaged with how to support a human to develop. So this is like spending time doing martial arts training and seeing like what the pedagogy looks like there. Like, how do you bring up a human in a martial arts context? Going to monasteries, how do you bring up a human in a monastic sense? Being in teacher-student relationships with a guru, like what does it mean to be under kind of rule by one person? So all these different configurations were what I was really interested in, and how they affected how someone grows and develops.
Yeah, that's actually so interesting. So let me ask you a question, which is seeing all that, was there any way that you felt more compelled, or actually not compelled, but observing all those different education approaches, let's call it that, what was the one that actually made you think, if any, that made you think, well, I wish I had experienced that? Am I being clear?
As in, like, what stood out to me as
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wish I
yeah.
had that more?
Yeah.
For myself personally, or what I think
Yeah, for
should,
yourself, for yourself.
Yeah. What I noticed was that after going to these different contexts and actually spending a lot of time outside of the educational system, was that I have a very different learning approach to what the schools were built for. And it's not like I'm unique or special. I just think that everyone has a way that they are best suited to go into risk and uncertainty. You know, you learn when you go towards something that you don't know. It's turning the unknown into the kind of known.
Yeah.
And everyone has a different way of doing that. So, but the way that I was doing it, which is kind of very it's kind of like very broad, and I like to look at like lots of different things and compare the patterns between them. That's just the pattern that I observed in myself, was not being supported by the schools. So I really liked being self-directed. I didn't like people necessarily telling me what to look at and like what's, you know, this book will get you to the thing. It's just like, no, maybe parts of this book will. I really like learning with other people. So I really enjoy having other people to reflect through and be like, is it this or is it that? I don't know. And then maybe them suggest a better question. Instead of this kind of one teacher to multiple students and then them kind of looking over me, I'd rather just have like 4 or 5 people who are looking at the same thing and just keep asking questions, bringing new things to each other. So I think that was the major insight that I had, is that was my style. And I needed to make more of that in my life. So the big takeaway is just like, figure out what your style is and try and build that structure.
So let me just ask one more question related to that, which is, after that insight, what were some specific changes that you make in your life in order to promote that kind of learning?
Yeah, I think the big one right now is to not do a PhD. I think I could have a supervisor and you know, go back into academia, but really, I've noticed that some of I can still have that in the position that I'm in, which is basically finding out through friends if there's somebody who has the related expertise and asking them the questions, having a close group of friends who work on similar questions. I really value my sort of distance from the traditional educational system. However, this does put me at a disadvantage because there's so many great resources that you could have. And I think really it's a case for me of I've been trying to find a way of having the right people around me. And I haven't found, I'm now trying to design my life in a way where I'm not just around academics who theorize. I think I can find them if I want to, but there's a very like unique flavor of academic or researcher who's kind of more action oriented, and maybe they have like a kind of entrepreneurial flair, or they like to build things and see if they break, and so I think finding more people like this is something that I'm really actively trying to do now, and yeah, just have good chats with them and keep diving into these questions.
Yeah. Good. So, take us through your journey throughout academia. So, how did you begin? And you didn't, as you were saying, you stopped and you aren't doing, at least for now, your PhD. So, take us from the beginning of your journey into academia to the moment where you are now.
Sure, yeah. So, went to a pretty small kindergarten. Then I went to a Catholic school while I was, around, before my teenage years. Went from a Catholic school to like a sort of basic sort of public school. Then went to, I basically moved through most of the kind of normal structures.
Normal stuff. Yeah.
Even went to from a public school to private school. A private school. I actually didn't go to university straight away. I went back to a trade college.
Oh.
So I just didn't go. I wanted to take time away. I actually went to university a year late, but I was also a year forward in school, so this was kind of okay. And then spent a year at trade college and did some stuff related to like business management and music management. Actually, I was like really interested in kind of like the kind of behind the scenes of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I did this because that just wasn't on offer, at school. I wanted to do things which were kind of real world and practical.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought a trade college would be cool for that. Then I went to University of West of England, or UWE in Bristol. And here I studied music technology, which was basically a BSc, covering things like creating audio applications and software, physics, music theory, as well as a little bit of like engineering and creative music production stuff. So I just knew that I wanted this blend of, I didn't want to be like in a hardcore physics program or like a science program. I needed to do something creative. So music technology just seemed to be the thing because it had like software programming, and as well as could just make music.
So let me just stop you right just to ask you something, which is that's one of the things that I while doing research I find out about you, and I really like, which is your relationship with music in a way that goes beyond just listening to it. And I actually went to college studying jazz music. And when I saw that you were studying music as well, I really liked it. And I wanted to ask you, you were saying that you wanted to do something which had some creativity on it, besides just engineering or software. But I must ask you, why music and not any other area at all?
Yeah, this is a fun question. I was very interested in what was bringing humans together, and I knew technology was one of those things that was kind of doing it, but I saw it most repeatedly in music concerts. Like, people weren't specifically interested in arriving at a goal together or completing a challenge, but there was such a sense of togetherness at music concerts and event, and this kind of got me very interested in what was going on there. I was kind of, one question I held in my mind was, is there a kind of universal language that we can all speak? And my hunch was music was the thing. Because I was, growing up in this multi-faith family, I was like, well, we keep arguing about what God is, but, we all show up at the same music concert and laugh and smile together. I just want to know what was going on there. So I spent a lot of time around musicians, and I think that was a kind of draw to music.
So let me ask you one small question before you continue into your academic journey. But this is actually a very personal question, which is, what was your favorite concert ever? And it's totally unrelated to everything that we're talking about, but I'm actually pretty curious about it.
There's a couple. There's a couple for different reasons. There was one where I went to like a rock concert with a girlfriend that I was seeing at the time. It was super magical. It was at the Roundhouse in Camden, which is a beautiful venue. It's a roundhouse. That was a magical moment just because it was with a magical person.
Yeah.
There was also a moment when I remember like sneaking into clubs when I was like 16 or 17 in Bristol. And this was like kind of like some of my first experiences of being around like really loud bass music, and just loved that experience. Dark room with just huge speaker systems. So that was a pretty transformative moment as well. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so please continue. You were saying that you went to college studying music and in software. Let continue your journey.
Sure. Yeah. What's fun or significant? I think there was something which was fun. I noticed that I had basically studied most of the first year content outside of. I'd already done it basically in school. I had the option to do music technology. So I basically had a lot of free time during the first year. I aced most of it. And because of that, and also in the second year, only having about 8 hours of contact time, I realized that I just had loads of space to do whatever. And so I spent a lot of time sneaking into the back of like business and economics lectures, philosophy, psychology, digital media as well. I used to just sit at the back of like whatever was going on when I had free time. I'd be on campus, so that was okay. I ended up also getting quite involved with, they called it like the startup hub or something. So I was really looking for like, what I noticed was I was learning a lot of theory, but I didn't quite know how the world worked, and I wanted to know how the world worked. So had to go towards like more practical or applied things. And I think some combination of hanging around the startup hub folk and also being in like just lectures wherever I could be, exploring my curiosity was, I think I spent more time in lectures that weren't to do with my original major than I did in the actual major. A lot of my course was actually practical, which was really like nice.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to absorb as much as I could because I was kind of had these questions going into university.
Yeah. So let's jump into another total different area, which is when I actually went to your website once again, you have this really nice idea behind it, and I want to ask you, which is this concept of Pidea, I think it's that way, and Praxis. And I wanted you to please explain what you mean both of those terms.
Yeah, sure. So Pidea X Praxis is the name of my personal website. It basically kind of is trying to encapsulate this core inquiry that I'm looking at. A paideia is basically a Greek word which is loosely about the raising of younger members of society, so children. And the responsibility of a paideia is kind of distributed. It's not just in the family. It's something which, policemen and care workers and teachers are all kind of part responsible for. So this is much easier in like a smaller community. The paideia is kind of like a community effort. This is kind of difficult or less clear in modern days, where it's like a school is part daycare as well as a place that you learn. So the paideia is basically this exploration of how do we raise children to become like fully active and enabled members of a society. And then practice is all about kind of very practical methods to do that. It's kind of the turning an art or theory into concrete practices.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just theorize about things. I also wanted to build things and look at what people were actually doing from a kind of practice standpoint and develop those.
Yeah. So, I'll pick up on that, which is you. Besides being theoretical, you actually wanted to be practical, and that's we get into the product that made me a fan of yours, which is Edu Creator. So, for people that are listening and have no idea what Edu Creator is, please let's share with us what is it.
Sure, yeah. Edu Creator OS is a operating system for hobbyists, experts, or educators who are trying to create more educational content and experiences. What I noticed was during the lockdown, a lot of people had to move their practices online, either consultants or teachers who were trying to figure out like what Zoom is and people who are also trying to create online courses. But it all uses Notion templates. Notion is a kind of note-taking app, and it's kind of more than that because you can create systems and processes and databases. So it's all built inside Notion, and it's kind of a central place that you can manage all of your creative projects and courses and workshops and articles and blogs, but it's also a dashboard for you to manage your business and all of the practicalities from finances to marketing. And it's really the kind of it's birthed out of doing lots of work with course creators, small channels, and also helping experts to get their stuff spread online. It's just come after a couple of years of making processes and templates for them that I've accumulated it into one thing and said, here's the thing that I wish that I had starting most of my client engagements, to say, this would be the thing. And we just build out of there, whatever you teach.
So, let me ask you something, which is, for how long have you been working on? You just said that you created these templates for your clients, and then you put it all together into Edu Creator OS. But for how long have you actually been working on these different templates?
Yeah, so I think it's been about 3 or so years of kind of event management, community like design management, consulting for different companies on their community strategies. It used to be Google Docs, really, like there was a lot of Google Docs. And then I figured out what Notion was. And I said, this is the thing, and moved it all over to there. But really the bulk of the product was made in about a month and a half's time, just, midway through lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's accumulation of about 3 years of stuff, but it's also was made pretty quickly because it was all there.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really loved about it, and I actually wrote about it as well, is the way you incorporate design into a lot of the things that you share on Edu Creator. So it's not only a template that actually helps you to organize your content, but also you have some really deep learning materials there that help you as a creator to actually structure your content in a way that facilitates better learning from your audience. So, but the one thing that I actually liked was your your use of design into it. So my question is, where did that come from? Where did you learn, or how did that relationship with design, using design to explain complex ideas, started?
Yeah, I think it comes from observing that some of the best like physics theories we have are very somehow simple or elegant. And I don't like to, I think if something's going to be useful, it should also kind of be elegant or beautiful. So the role of design really is to make that functionality, support the functionality. There's lots of flashy things, like I could have lots of GIFs in there, dancing and, but really when I think about design, I'm just trying to think of how can I say the most with the least, and what supports the there's always this term everyone says in design, which is form follows function. So I think about what is the function, and then like what form and design features would kind of support it. But I've always had kind of like a very visual or aesthetic eye for things, all the way back to being the head of art at my school or something.
Yeah.
It was, I don't really know what that means when you give a young person that kind of title, but like clearly I was seen as somehow creative, and yeah, it just carries through now. Everything I try to make with a touch of beauty in it instead of just, you know,
Yeah,
raw and functional.
it's a great product. Let me ask you one final question about Edu Creator, which is what's the impact you're hoping to have with that specific product?
Yeah, there's been two things which I intended. One is coming to life more than the second thing. The first one is that more consultants are becoming more confident that the thing that they want to say can be shared more online. I think this was the first group of people in my mind who I was like, I hope this thing can help them. I knew so many smart people who were just not able to get their message out or say what they wanted to say online. They were just kind of scared or didn't see the structures or the tools that they needed. So it's mainly been adopted by consultants who have a very niche thing that they're trying to say. The second group of people that it's helping, but not in the same degree, is educators. I really hope that the impact it can have is to help more traditional teachers and university lecturers find a way into kind of teaching more independently or learning how to teach online and remote. So especially during the pandemic, there's huge need to figure out how to do this online thing, and that's one more area I hope it can kind of help. And this is also kind of tied up to businesses moving their stuff online. So anyone who's doing educational stuff, I think this kind of relates to you, where your team are doing a lot of digital teaching.
Yeah. So I just have a couple of more questions before we go. And the first one was in your, I think it's in your Twitter bio, you have this expression that I love, which was augmenting creativity. And I really like that idea because, and this is actually something that scares me when I talk with a lot of students and actually a lot of grown-ups and adults that are working already in different areas. They seem to believe that creativity is something that you have and it's fixed. You know, oh, I'm not a creative person and I cannot, and this is the most that I can. And watching your Twitter bio and seeing that word augmenting, I really like it. So I just want to ask you, how can one do this? How can one increases their own creativity in their lives?
Sure, there's heaps of different ways. I guess it really depends on what domain you're creative in. I think technology has a huge part to play in what I mean by that. There's lots of ways you could just do it without a computer. I'm also exploring this in terms of like what opens you up to making these new connections between information and finding out new relationships between different parts of your knowledge. So this is one aspect of creativity that I think about. And that doesn't need to be with technology, but I think in the way that I mean it in the bio is that we're all kind of creative in that one way I view a human is that you basically turn ideas into reality. You're a kind of imagination to reality machine or entity. And so everybody has this unique way that they do that. And I call this their idea to reality stack. For a artist, this is kind of like a sketchbook where it has kind of three stages where they need to generate ideas, you need to have thoughts. Then you need to figure out if those thoughts are kind of, you can make them into reality. Are they possible? So you need to test things and like see if they work in certain areas. And then you actually need to have these kind of ways of implementing it, like your praxis, you're making things real. So generating ideas, making your ideas possible, and then actually implementing ideas. So everyone does this, and it's just a creative process. So the way I think about augmenting creativity is to figure out what that person's idea to reality stack is and find the right tools or techniques and methods that person needs to open up that aperture so that they can get more of it through. And that's kind of what I mean by that term is, can I extend your already existing capacity of turning ideas into reality? Can I augment it and make it reach new things, or create in new ways that you didn't know that you could create?
That's a great answer. So I have just three more questions, and the first one is actually once again stolen by that stack of questions that you have, and I actually like these questions so much that I will definitely start using it on more episodes. Which is, can you share with me three doubts you have? A doubt about yourself, about your work, and about your world.
Sure. Doubt about myself. Firstly, the zoom out. This is a game made by a friend, Joe Edelman from Human Systems. We call it Doubt Club, and I think it's just a really fun set of questions to ask friends and people at different occasions.
Yeah.
So Doubt Club, three doubts. The first one about myself is I doubt my ability. I doubt my ability to approach the people that I think really contribute the most to my learning. I sometimes have this kind of, it's weird because sometimes I have no social fear around this. I just message someone and go like, hey, you're the leading guy on this. Can we talk? And then sometimes I just really back off. I'm like, oh, I want to talk to you, but I don't. So there's some kind of like social anxiety thing, which I feel, but I also don't in some situations, and I want to get to the bottom of that. So I have a doubt around this. So finding the right collaborators, I think, is probably the doubt. A doubt I have about my work and my job role. I doubt whether this is the right and sustainable path. Like I'm really trying to self-fund a lot of my research. Whether that be through products or my Patreon, and I wonder if it's also just a good idea to go do that PhD. So that's one doubt I have related to work and my role and position in the world. And then a doubt in the world at large. I think I have a doubt of some of our leaders in ed tech. The people who are really putting in the tech, I have a doubt that they see the need or can realize the importance of how there's still this very developmental process which needs to happen with teachers in schools to get them to radically change education. I don't think there's a kind of belief which people have, which is like the technology will just sweep everything aside and put this new paradigm in. But I don't think that it works like that. I think really teachers go through a developmental process of being like, well, I need something which extends what I do right now. And then maybe if that works, then I can figure out, okay, I want to try something quite new. Yeah, I mean, if that's new, then I'll try something new, more exotic and different. It's like if you drop technology into a classroom with no community around it, people just be like, whoa. If it's something similar like flashcards, they'll be like, oh yeah, we can use that. But if it's really game changing, but doesn't have the community of practice, the rich social structures around it, and the new pedagogy around it, then it's just going to kind of blow over. And so I have this doubt around ed tech and how people are deploying it in the world. And I think that's what I'm trying to address with Pidea and Practice, which is like, what are the social practices that we need? And then can we augment them with technology? And yeah.
That's a great answer. So let me ask you just one more question, which is I have this firm belief that, and I have it because I've worked with a lot of people here in Portugal and entrepreneurs, students, everyone actually, and I noticed this pattern that we as humans, I believe we have, which is we have a couple of questions that we're constantly coming back to, all right, and we keep asking them in different phases of our own life, but there are usually 2-3 questions that we just keep asking ourselves. So I wonder if this makes any sense to you. What are some of those questions that you keep asking yourself throughout your life?
One of them is like, what is a human? This is very kind of broad, but the answer you come up with that drastically changes what you do with yourself and how you treat others. So just keeping that in the back of my mind, like,
Yeah.
you know, how do I define a human? Why and what's the importance of them? Are we somehow unique? Are we just a monkey with a big brain? It changes the way that we approach life. So that's one question. Another question that I generally hold around. Oh, I had it and I lost it. Let's see if it comes back to me. Another question I have is probably more to do with like what kind of society do we want to live in? It's less of a question of like, is Marxism better than I don't know, capitalism, but more a question of like, how do I find a meaningful life, and like what are the structures to support that? It's like less about adopting ideologies than it is about like actively constructing it. And so I think about like how to help people like have that conversation. You know, not just policymakers and stuff, but like just the average guy who's like, you know, how do you want to live? Like, how do you want to be with your family? And another fun question that keeps cropping up. I think a lot about the role of sort of inspiration and curiosity in learning institutions. I tend to think about like, what am I inspired by? This is like a way to kind of move away from just goals of like, I want to be rich, I want to be wealthy, you know, I want to have status. They're kind of tied to that, but a lot of what we do is kind of just imitation. I think this is kind of from the fundamental way of learning, which is like monkey see, monkey do. And I don't think that ever leaves. So I have to be kind of mindful of what I'm inspired by, so I can be mindful of like what I'm imitating, or if I am imitating, if I'm doing something quite new. So
that makes total sense. So first of all, thank you so much. Before I ask you the last question, if people want to connect with you and know more about you, what's the best place to do it?
Yeah, I'm most active on Twitter. My handle is Serj Hunt _ARK. That's Serj with a J, SERJ HUNT. And also my personal website, Pidea and Practice. It's a bit of a mouthful, but
yeah, we'll leave the links in the description. So Serj, thank you again. Thank you so much for doing this. My last question is the question that actually gives name to the podcast, and is, what drives you?
What drives me? Wonder and mystery. I think these are the two big things which keep me open to the world. There's this whole sort of frame of, there's a kind of slogan that I have, which is mystery, not mastery. I don't believe anything can really be mastered. The human life is too short. So wonder and mystery are the things which drive me.
That's probably one of the best answers I've had in 40 plus episodes. That actually makes total sense. Really good. Serj, once again, thank you so much. For everyone watching, please follow Serj on social media. We'll leave the links in the description, and please leave a rating in your favorite podcast app. And we'll see you soon enough. Thank you once again, Serj.
Thank you.
A great day.